Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
The following issues may contain spoilers. As junior woodchucks, we must memorize all 4,785 chapters of the guidebook word for word to ensure the survival of civilization. I'm Anthony.
I'm David.
And I'm Katie.
I'm Dr. Kurt's dad.
Welcome to issue number 342 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Every time we record, we talk about comic books. On this week's show, we are finally going to wrap up our mini-series for Uncle Scrooge, Earth's Mightiest Duck, by talking about issues 3 and 4, but more so just collectively as a whole, rather than the individual issues. And then we're going to do weekly reviews. That's where we go back and forth, and we talk about the books that we've been reading, whether they're new, whether they're old. We're going to talk about them there. So let's dive in with the club discussion. All right, to kick off the Uncle Scrooge Earth's Mightiest Duck, I wrapped up the synopsises for issue 1 as well as number 4. The planet has been conquered by alien invaders, the connoisseurs, nefarious hoarders of the rarest antiquities from throughout the cosmos. As they tear the Earth apart, pillaging its fabled treasures, only the world's greatest adventurer can possibly stop them. But Scrooge McDuck is facing a battle unlike any he's ever fought, trapped inside his own mind, fighting to preserve his most precious memories. In the grand finale of this landmark Uncle Scrooge adventure, the war against the alien invaders, the connoisseurs, reaches its zenith as Scrooge McDuck realizes that his entire life has been leading to this moment, to a decision that will change everything forever. Man, I did a really good job reading that for the first time live on air. All right, here we go. And this comic, oh boy, this comic was done by Jason Aaron, Lorenzo Pastrovicchio, Alessandro Pastrovicchio, Andrea Dressero, Giuseppe Camuncoli, Danielle Orlandini, Dale Eaglesham, Ariana Consani, and VC's Joe Caramagna. My apologies to those names if I mangled them. But here we go. This is the wrap-up of the 4-issue series that we talked about of Uncle Scrooge, Earth's Mightiest Duck. What we're going to do is kind of talk about it as a whole here. We are a little late to the party to finish this, so we'll just kind of do it as a collective, and we'll go around, kind of talk about our overall thoughts and stuff like that. Dr. Kurtzstad, do you want to kick it off and tell us your thoughts about this miniseries?
The whole miniseries I thought was good as a departure from normal stuff you might find with Scrooge McDuck and his nephews. Normally a little more funny. This is more kind of a science fiction, serious, a little more serious sort of understanding. The last couple issues, which is what we're mainly focusing on, I thought picked up the story a lot. There was a lot more action. There's a lot more movement of things going on in these last 2 issues. We get some sense of finally Scrooge breaks out of his own mind, and we're thrown back into the ongoing story of the aliens taking over all the stuff from the planet. Scrooge has an ingenious way, I don't want to have any spoilers here, of hiding his own money so that they can't find it, which I think was wonderful. I found the ending interesting. I would have probably ended the story if I was writing it myself, which probably no one would buy it then, very differently than they ended this story, with some things left way up in the air and some things that were never totally resolved as part of the story. It's interesting. I thought they left it open for the future. I don't know if they're going anywhere with this, because it's not the normal world we find of Duckburg and things that are going on. This is a is a unique sort of setting for things, but they left it open at the end that they could continue on in this kind of universal setting for DuckTale sort of stories. So we'll have to see where they're going to go with it. But overall, I found it an interesting story. As I said in one of the earlier reviews, I missed some of the humor that you normally have in stuff related with Donald and family. But it was still an interesting story and well put together. I like the artwork in it. I think it was well done. So that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah, bringing Jason Aaron on as the writer, who is very well known for writing big, epic Marvel-sized events over at Marvel Comics with the superheroes proper, as well as writing his own independent comics of great grand scale and everything. So you can definitely feel that, getting him doing this, like it could have very easily been a 12-issue series, what he would normally do in these big Marvel epic events, but cramming it into 4 issues. So I think on that storytelling level of him working on such a limited space for an epic size story, I thought he did it pretty well. And I agreed a lot of things that you said too about could be more humor thrown in there. If you had Marvel over here and Scrooge comic stuff over here, it leaned more towards Marvel side of like action and concentrating mostly on that kind of stuff and keeping it epic. But yeah, I think overall I was fairly satisfied with the ending, and this all started with the Uncle Scrooge and the Infinity Dime, which was the one shot that happened, and then they started doing all the what if issues and just kind of recasting these characters into different Marvel, retellings of Marvel character origin stories and stuff. So it feels like all of this is maybe it was like a gift after like maybe the reaction of the Infinity Dime. Maybe they only had the intention of like, oh, this will be a fun one-off thing, but then people probably responded and they're like, hey, let's do a little more. So maybe with the reaction to this one, maybe maybe we will get more down in the future too, or maybe this was the whatever Jason Aaron and the artist wanted to say with these characters, maybe that's it as well, and other people can kind of take it over. But I think I'm mostly interested in eventually rereading it as a whole, with having read the first 2 issues, last year, and then having a big break. And because I just read these ones this morning just to try to stay fresh with it, but I should have taken some extra time and just reread all 4 of them. But overall, pretty satisfied. But I think it makes me excited to revisit it in just a one sitting read. So.
I thought it was clever the way they defeated the coin-operated robots too. So that was
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fun little like hijinks, and that's where a lot of the comedy stuff did kind of come in, and with Huey, Dewey, and Louie kind of bringing in some good comedy, and Donald Duck there's definitely had those moments, but yeah, it very much leaned on the epic side of things. Let's jump over to Katie. Your thoughts on Uncle Scrooge, Earth's Mightiest Duck?
Yeah, absolutely. So glad we could wrap up this series. I did enjoy it. I thought it was fun and goofy, and I liked that they kind of took Uncle Scrooge out of his comfort zone and made him do new things. The line work and the detail and the color work in this book is absolutely beautiful. I know D. Brad Gibson has, talked about, the specifics of the artists who are doing this and their influences, which is super cool. Anthony's showing up an awesome splash page, and I want to know about the story of Uncle Scrooge and Santa Claus. I want that one shot, please. Yeah. That would be nice. Because honestly, there's a couple panels in here where Uncle Scrooge, with his long beard and disheveled hair and his red jacket, kind of looks like Santa Claus. So I'm like, that would be a good one. There were a couple of moments I really liked, which is that Scrooge has to confront who am I without all of my money and my wealth, and does my money and my material wealth make me Scrooge McDuck, or am I Scrooge McDuck regardless? And the qualities and traits that allow me to build up this fortune, how do I apply them just on their own. So like we see his tenacity, his desire to like work hard, and I think his strength of character, because he's having this internal dilemma of what memories do I get rid of. Every single coin represents a memory for me and a phase in my life for me. And so what happens when I lose all of that? And there's a very, I think, um, touching moment where there's like three different Scrooges all on a hot air balloon, and some of his past personalities and past memories say, hey, the only way we can fix this is if we lighten the load. And then they jump into the sea of molten coins, and now Scrooge has lost those memories, but it enables him to wake up in the present time and go and fight bad guys. There's also a moment where Scrooge takes a gold bar and like pistol whips some of the bad guys with it, that I thought was honestly a little bit graphic, but cartoonishly very funny. And then um, I thought it was really sweet at the end how Donald and Huey, Dewey, and Louie are, still looking out for Scrooge. And Scrooge, despite being at what appears to be an advanced age, also, I think we talked about this when we last reviewed this, but it seems like Scrooge might be kind of immortal, or he's able to like jump timelines or something, because he's had a long life. He's still trying to make money, and he's trying to offer shoe shines. And then Donald says, well, I'm not wearing any shoes, but you can do my feet. And so maybe Scrooge will go into doing nails and pedicures and stuff like that. And I think he could make good money. He's got the grit for it.
Yeah.
And then also something I thought was funny was they are using Scrooge's coins and putting them into the bad guy robots to like reset them and get them to do what they want. It reminded me of like those little like coin operated cars and like rides they used to have at like Walmart and grocery stores and at the mall that would cost like 75 cents for a ride, and the cheap ones would only last like 45 minutes, and you'd have to put another coin in because the bad guy robots kept being like, insert coin to continue, insert coin to continue. And I thought that was an interesting touch that was pretty funny, and it reminded me a lot of that. And like arcade games that cost $2 and you get maybe a minute, and you got to put more money in if you want to do anything fun with it. And then I like that at the end, even though Scrooge appears to not have his memories, he's still Scrooge. He still has a sense of adventure, and maybe it's him from the future coming back, or just kind of who the essence of Scrooge always was. But he tells the ducks, hey, you guys want to go on an adventure with me? And we see him on top of a spaceship blasting through space. So I had a lot of fun with this series. Like Anthony said, I bet you it'll be really fun to kind of reread as a whole. And um, I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. It was the levity that I needed to read today. So that's my review of Uncle Scrooge, Earth's Mightiest Duck. Check it out.
And David, you have not read this, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything that comes to mind with questions or reactions to what we've read, and as far as the portions that you've heard?
Not really. I mean, not having read it myself, it's hard to really comment on it or whatever. The whole concept of it and everything sounds interesting. Um, I was a fan of the old DuckTales cartoon and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is something that I passed on reading, but I feel like I would have enjoyed, checking it out and kind of investigating it and see what the comic version of these characters is like comparatively. I really haven't read, like Disney cartoon kind of comics. Um, so it's something that's like untapped for me, comparing cartoon versus comic when it comes to that.
I was
Cool.
going to say, seeing we seem to have drifted a little into spoilers anyway.
There is a warning at the pre-recorded warning that spoilers could happen, so feel
Okay.
free for anyone to say.
One of what I talked about as my disappointment at the end is the whole DuckTales universe is, literally you would call it comedy. Comedy usually ends with things coming back together, the person finds their way. Well, at the end of this, Scrooge still doesn't have his memories. And there's something more dramatic, more sad in the fact that now Scrooge has lost all of his knowledge of who he was. And yes, we still have this energetic person who's willing to go off and have adventures. There's a much of his heart in it, but to have your memories suddenly ripped out of your life, somehow that seemed to me at the end of that story to be a little bit of, well, this isn't what I expected. It was great and within the story having that happen in him, but I would have probably, and this is just my take on things, been more comfortable if somehow he had regained his memories rather than continuing to have those ripped away from him like that.
Yeah. And I don't know the history of any of the creative team, but I assume none of them have actually worked in TV, worked on, a DuckTales cartoon or something like that. And I think what happens a lot of times is even though people, well, not everybody in TV and movies and whatever reads comics, but most people that are in comics, watch TV and movies and everything. But they're used to writing and drawing and everything and doing everything in terms of a comic book. And sometimes when you're trying to translate something that's more familiar to people on the screen into a comic book, sometimes they're still caught into, I'm writing this like I would normally write a comic book, which does tend to be a little bit more dramatic or leave you with some unanswered things because they want to potentially pick back up at some point and do a follow-up to it or something like that. Rather than an episode of a cartoon, a TV show, where it has a nice little wrap up to it. If it doesn't have, like now, you get a lot more TV that has this overreaching storyline to it because people, they're binge watching and they're watching this whole thing unfold. But traditionally, when it comes to things like this, you're watching just an episode where everything's wrapped up and everything, and we're not, keeping something for a later date. So I think that difference is what kind of throws you off, is that maybe that they're writing this like a comic rather than a TV show. And it is a comic book, so that makes sense, but it's a comic book that that people would be familiar with from TV and things like that. So you almost have to go about it differently than writing most comics.
Yeah. I guess I was commenting more on just the atmosphere of those comics is much more light, but they ended it on a pretty heavy reality.
They gave hope that where like Scrooge had talked about how he like knew every single penny that he had earned and they all attached with memories. So maybe the idea of there's some hope of him maybe regaining some of that by going out trying to find these coins and get them back and stuff. But maybe that is another story for somebody else to pick up, where much like what happens with Daredevil in Marvel Comics more than any of the other characters, where creators love to just take him off the deep end and leave him there to make it challenging for the next creative team to write themselves out of that hole. And in a way, maybe that's kind of what they're doing if somebody is going to pick up Scrooge McDuck. Not that Scrooge McDuck needs to be treated that way, but that's what they're doing. So
I had a theory that kind of that last splash page where, Scrooge is inviting Donald and the nephews to go on an adventure, that maybe that is either Scrooge from the future after he's gotten back his memories, or, some of his, past lives as memories lived on or survived in some way because they're a part of him that's inextricable. And so I kind of felt like, well, maybe at that point, like Scrooge does have some of his memories or is going to be capable of getting some of them back. But that's just my interpretation. What do you think?
He definitely got some enthusiasm when he was, given his first coin that he, saying that he's on his way to becoming rich when he, lost all of his riches and now he got one coin for shining Donald's feet or whatever he was doing there. But yeah, then,
Replace the first coin that he used to defeat the last of the robots.
yeah. But maybe this comic was. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like, and I'm probably reading way too deep for a Disney comic, but I feel like it's a question of being rich financially and being rich in life and love and friendships and experiences. And one of those things comes and goes, right? The other one is very much more immaterial. And while it might change and evolve throughout our life, I felt like the book was saying it's harder to take away the richness of our love for others and our zest for life than it is, just losing some money. But that's just, I'm getting a little touchy feely about a Disney comic.
No, I think that's a good point, that is what's there. But I think for me, if I had been, unless they're planning to go ahead, then I think all of you are right that if you're planning to continue the story, then this is a good way to end it. If you're not going to continue the story, then what you have is that you do have that essence of who he is that was built over all that time with the memories. But your memories also are a great part of who you are. And if you don't regain those somehow, you're forever altered by that reality.
Yeah.
And I would have, if you're not going to continue this, then I would have somehow probably have created the situation in which he somehow gets his memories back and learns to appreciate them more now that he's been through this whole thing, rather
I
than
like that idea.
Leaving it at the end where, he's learned some important things. He's a different person in some ways, but there's something incomplete without him getting his memories back, unless somebody plans to carry that on into the future. And that's...
Yeah. Even if he had
I see where you're going with this. No, that does make sense, and I think that would have been a nice way to maybe round out the comic. I see where you're going with this. That's a really good point.
And I forget the name of the of one of his love interests that, because I think she was. Say it again.
Daisy, I think.
Well, no, because that would be with Donald, right?
Goldie?
Wasn't
it something like Gold or Golden?
So even if she would have been a part of it, and then it was enough for him to remember and like wink at the audience, like, okay, I remember, something like that maybe would have sparked a little more hope of like a memory of like one of a strong memory or something. But yeah. Or the comic did exactly what it needed to do by having us discuss it on a podcast and figure there's so many multiple endings and possibilities. But if anything, it probably proved that we enjoyed it one way or another. So
yeah. I was going to say it diverted into a deep diving duck discussion.
That's right.
Well, the next time we see D. Brad, he was unable to join us for this episode. We'll have to get his thoughts on it, being the cartoon duck enthusiast that he is. So, any closing thoughts from anybody, or are we good? All right. That is going to do it. And that is going to do it for our current club discussions. We will probably be restructuring how we approach that because just the way people get comics and pre-ordering and things like that, not a lot of us are looking at the catalogs as much, and that includes myself. I just kind of order what I'm looking for, following characters and such. So that'll be an off-air discussion, but we will figure out how to revitalize the club discussion going forward. But in order to do that, we have to jump over to the weekly reviews. Welcome to the weekly reviews. To kick it off, we're going to start with Dr. Kurtzstad. What did you bring us?
Thanks, Anthony. I get to go first for once. I have The Nobody, which I originally bought this because Anthony was looking at it and I hadn't heard about it before. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I'm a reader of classic sci-fi stories, and this is based on H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. Jeff Lemire is the person who did the story. And I really enjoyed this. If people get a chance to read this, especially if you're interested in some of those older stories and retellings of them, this is a great story. The artwork is one of the things that just makes this great, because I think given the sense of the story that it has kind of a dark mood to it at times and stuff. They do a great job of creating that atmosphere through the artwork. That's part of it. It retells the Invisible Man story, basically setting it in a small town where Griffin, which is the name which was originally used by H.G. Wells for the Invisible Man, shows up in a town and gets a room and immediately starts everybody in the town talking. This person covered in bandages. What's he about? Everybody is speculating and trying to find out. I'm going to try to avoid any spoilers so that people can go ahead and check this out because it has some really interesting elements to it. As opposed to H.G. Wells' original story, this book makes Griffin, the main character, much more sympathetic. In the H.G. Wells story, if people are familiar with it, Griffin develops the serum to make himself invisible, is trying to find an antidote to get out of it. But as things move forward, Griffin is basically being driven insane. He becomes more and more violent, more and more abusive of people around him, frantically trying to come up with this. And in this, Griffin becomes much more sympathetic as he makes his struggle to get back to being seen. We learn some tragic things that were a part of the original experiment with invisibility that Griffin is trying to live through. There are people who are out trying to seize the formula from him. We have a special relationship that forms with Griffin during the story, which is not something that was a part of the original Invisible Man story, and adds a certain humanizing element to the whole story, I think, in a way. And then the ending is a twist from where the original Invisible Man story ends, with some elements of Griffin being more heroic, being more self-sacrificing, and leaves it open in a different way than the original story. So I enjoyed reading this story mainly as a fan of the original Invisible Man story. And this takes it to a different place and in a different way that I found interesting, enlivening. I'm not a person who wants every story to be told exactly as it was the first time it was told. Sometimes a new retelling of a story can uncover some new and really wonderful elements of what the story is about. And I think that Jeff Lemire did a great job of taking an original story, adding some elements, making it really a wonderful piece for people to read.
I agree. Being a big fan of Jeff Lemire, I've talked about him time and time again throughout all of the episodes of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club, whether it be his Marvel and DC work, but mostly his independent work. And, this was a collection that was originally released through Vertigo, that when seeing this new collection, this new hardcover edition, looks like through Dark Horse, not even knowing this existed. The Invisible Man movie, the original, is one of my favorites out of the Universal Monster movies, and I think the tone works really well, as Dr. Kurtzstad said, is with the art style. Like, everything Jeff Lemire does has a very familiar sense of mood, and it always feels like all of the stories that he's ever done, they all feel like they just exist in the same town because, his art style is the same. Some people may think that you're just getting the same thing over and over again. I find that comforting in a way that I just know that I'm going to get a great story, because he does great with these kind of these genres and these moods and thought pieces and stuff. And putting that into the Invisible Man character was just a great combination. You think about anything else that, I'm sure that Jeff would be able to tackle any of the Universal monsters, but I think out of all of them, Invisible Man seemed like a perfect fit. And so I was excited to get that. And I remember when I was talking about it, and then right away, Dr. Kurtzstad was like, I think you just sold me on a book. And I'm like, yep, I did too. And once I found out he wanted to review this, then I put it to the top of my pile because I just got my copy in the mail this week and devoured it. And no disappointments. It's just another great Jeff Lemire book that.
It's almost sacrilege for me to say this because usually classical pieces I really like, but I think Jeff Lemire gave a greater depth to the story of the Invisible Man than H.G. Wells actually gave it in the original story.
There we go. Yeah, it's very well done, and yeah, I loved it. It was once again another for sure purchase because I'm like, yep, Jeff Lemire. I've trusted him time and time again, and he's never disappointed. And this continues that streak. So good. All right. So there we go. We are going to then jump over to me. It feels like I just reviewed the book, so I'm confused right now. That was The Nobody. But the one I'm here to talk about, surprise, surprise, but it is a brand new book, so I'm not forcing this into the current releases because it is a current release. It is The Muppets Noir #1. It was a dark and froggy evening. It's time to cue the music. It's time to dim the lights. It's time to get things started as the Muppets return tonight. The show is about to begin as the famous Muppet Theater at the famous Muppet Theater, and the regular pre-curtain chaos has the troupe's stalwart MC, Kermit the Frog, coming apart at the seams. In an attempt to de-stress, he settles down to read a few pages of a favorite old detective novel, only to get KO'd by a brick to the bean, leaving him laid out backstage as his co-stars try to coax him back into consciousness. But unbeknownst to them, Kermit has taken up the hard-boiled mantle of his fictional hero to walk the darkened streets of Dreamland, righting wrongs and cracking cases under the concealing cover of night. Flip Minnow, P.I., has no time for song and dance, not if he's going to solve the baffling mystery of the snoozing sleuth. This is done by Roger Langridge, Dirba Kelly, and Nate Cosby. Okay, so this is a Muppet mini-series here. Muppet Noir. It's been quite a while since we've had a brand new Muppet comic, and Roger has worked with the Muppets and has done many comics in the past, so it was fun to now get a 2026 brand new comic here. Even though it's Muppet Noir, it is still very much rooted within the Muppet Show lore. As we open up backstage and Kermit's flipping out because they're trying to organize all the acts that they're doing, and there's only so much time, but then there's so many different acts, but they're always trying to figure out what kind of finale to do. And they find out that Kermit is stressing out, even to the point where Miss Piggy wanted to do something nice and bake him a pie, but because he's so stressed out, he flips out on Piggy, and she gets all upset, goes up to her dressing room, and he feels guilty right away. And Kermit, in perfect flailing arm mode, is just freaking out that the show is just in chaos, as it usually is, which is just the whole concept of the Muppet Show is it's chaos backstage. But as he wants to relax, he goes and he's going to sit in a little like library room and sit in a chair and read an old detective adventure from his favorite character. And let's see, Rip Marlene is the character of the book that he reads. But as the premise says, is that when the Muppet Show people are kind of practicing some of their acts, they're throwing these bricks around, and a loose brick gets basically gets into the next room as it knocks Kermit out, and Kermit immediately is transported into Dreamland as he is now Flip Minnow, P.I. And Sweetums here is playing a character that is a chauffeur, and he is picking up Kermit to take him to the client. So this is the whole setup now of the actual issue, is that this character's niece has gone missing, and the niece, and according to the photograph here, is played by Miss Piggy. You know, everyone, you know, the whole idea of the Muppet and a lot of the movies is that these characters are playing characters, and that is no different here within this comic book. Is that as we go through the story, we see a lot of the Muppet characters. We got Crazy Harry with a picket sign out front. We got Fozzie, who actually did have a running sketch in the later seasons of the Muppet Show for a cop sketch. We got Rizzo working in a morgue. So all of our characters are kind of recasted into this noir setting as Kermit is going through and trying to figure out what happened to the missing niece of this client. And it's just fun and hijinks as he goes through and meets all of our characters. Gonzo is in there, of course, and it's just a lot of fun taking taking the noir genre and just full on committing to it in this Muppet story. By you could easily see this as a one-off special or even a movie in itself and stuff like that. So I think it captured the vibe of the characters very much, and ultimately is setting up a good mystery for this character. And but what's interesting is knowing that this is all existing within Kermit's mind as he's knocked out. So I'm very curious to see what the rest of the issues and how it's going to play out and how it's going to be. How is it going to be perceived by the people who aren't knocked out in the Muppet Show? Like, is there going to be any consequence? Like, is Kermit just going to be like in a coma for this whole thing? Or so I'm real curious to see how it is going to play out. But I thought this first issue did a great job, and so yeah, the Muppets Noir. There we go.
Oh, me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to think of that like from a lens of somebody who maybe just likes noir stories, but doesn't.
That's why I wouldn't buy it.
So, yeah,
Spider-Man Noir was great.
exactly. You just got a trailer now for the upcoming Amazon series with Nicolas Cage for the Spider-Man Noir. But yeah, so I'd be very curious to hear from people who what they think of the noirness, but then when you add in the Muppet chaos and stuff. But I think it very much keeps the tone, everything, when you dive into the dark grays and the blacks and, it's always raining and stuff like that, has all the right ingredients for a good noir story. So, but I'm curious to see what actually is behind why this character ran away. And I should mention, too, that her name is Meringue, like a lemon meringue pie. So what's interesting is that because in the Muppet Show in the beginning, Piggy is bringing a pie for Kermit, but now in his Dreamland Noir storyland, she is a character named Meringue. So I'm very and I'll say this as a teaser because I don't really know what's going on yet. Is that there's something Kermit is experiencing when there's something pie related happening within the Noir story that I think there's a lot more to unfold. So I'll just show off if you're watching the YouTube panel that a pie scent comes across him, but you'll see that he is quite shocked, which seems to be an opposite reaction to if anyone smells a delicious pie. But maybe there's some mystery there too. I don't know yet. That's a little tease, and I look forward to finding out. So. And I did buy several blank cover sketch variants of this. I think I bought 3 or 4 of them. So I may have to start tackling some of my own Muppet Noir art on those covers. So, all right, that is going to do it for the Muppets Noir issue number 1. Jumping over to David, what you got?
All right. Well, I'm jumping way back in time. Digging through the Kirby collection. And I've always loved the What If comics. So I pulled up this one. It's in pretty rough shape. But this is What If Phoenix had not died? And it's funny, they actually put the X-Men ask. So I guess the X-Men wanted to know what if Phoenix had not died. And I haven't actually read the What If comics for quite a while, and I was kind of surprised at the length of this, and now I'm curious as to like how long most of these books actually were, because this one's, I mean, you got 40 some pages,
They were
and it
normally standard combat comic book length.
yeah, so it's the last, yeah, 48 pages.
Wow, that is big for a.
Um,
For what
yeah,
if?
I was surprised even with the length of it, it still contained a backup story in here. Um, so the nice thing about this comic was, if you're not familiar with the Dark Phoenix saga, you hadn't read that before, the first few pages of this really just recap. They tell you what happened, so you don't have to know because it's going to tell you what happened, and then it'll tell you where it diverges and said, well, that's what did happen, but what if this happened instead? Um, and I like that. It looks very much like the comics of that time period. This was from July of 1981, the What If comic. Um, so it has the similar style of art that you would expect. It's probably, Marvel House style anyway, so it's not gonna go too different, not like comics of our current age of comics where people are allowed more so to do their own style. Usually you had the DC house style or the Marvel house style and so on and so forth, and you couldn't really stray too far from that. And yet artists still were allowed to kind of put their own little style on it as long as it stayed within there. This one, as my eyeballs are getting older and I gotta do this with my glasses now to read. Jerry Bingham was the penciler. John Stewart, not the Green Lantern, was the inker. Carol Garfield, colorist. Uh, Simek and Chang, letterers. DeFalco Grunwald, editors. Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief, and of course, written by Mary Jo Duffy. Um, but yeah, like I said, it goes several pages in just telling you what originally happened, so that you can enjoy this what if story without, you know, having to have gone back and read the Dark Phoenix saga. Or like me, it would have been reading it again because it's been a number of years since I've read it. But it remains one of the stories that I recommend to people that want to get into X-Men and, which big X-Men stories should I read? Dark Phoenix Saga is definitely one of them. Um, Yeah, so in this case, they veer off. She's not killed. Instead, she's sort of lobotomized, but just the part of her brain that contains all of her mutant abilities, her telepathic abilities, and she cannot function as Phoenix without those abilities. Um, because this is before the whole reveal that Jean Grey wasn't the Phoenix and she was in a cocoon and all this stuff, which has later been greatly ignored anyway. You're going back to what Jean Grey would have been without her mutant abilities. And she's still there. She's still part of the team, but she's, operating controls in the danger room and she's serving them tea and cookies and, whatever she can do to help now that she's no longer uh, a mutant, we'll say, no longer has her abilities. They remind her that she's still and always will be an X-Man. Um, Somehow, even without the abilities, she gets sent in um, when they get this distress call from Lilandra of the Shi'ar Empire, saying that Galactus is about to devour a planet, and somehow nobody from the entire Shi'ar Empire can get there in time, but they do send the X-Men a ship so that they can get there. It also kind of introduces Kitty Pryde, but under somewhat different circumstances than she originally was, and they kind of show you the differences. With Jean Grey having died, Storm, Aurora Monroe, really takes Kitty under her wing and becomes kind of this mother figure to her. Um, she had the crush on Colossus. There were these different aspects. Wolverine was also very protective of her. Um, and with Jean still in the picture, those relationships didn't form in the same way. So they kind of explore that a little bit. Um, they explore it. Kitty actually got a little bit closer to Professor X because of this. Um, and we get a lot of action on an alien planet where they have to call in some help from Havoc and Polaris to try and defeat Terrax and Galactus. Um, so, as I joked with Anthony off of here, this is also kind of a Kirby collection because we get some Jack Kirby characters going on in here. Um, and we get to see Phoenix battling Galactus.
Oh.
And how that goes, when you have two godlike beings facing off against each other. And Jean is able to keep this in check. Now, this happens after a while, she's slowly able to heal her mind. And when Cyclops is in danger, she kind of is just suddenly snapped back into being Phoenix and having all of her abilities and everything. So they face off against that. They get through that whole thing, and then they face off against some Sentinels, and they're trying to decide, trying to figure out, well, who's behind the Sentinels coming back. Um, the team's struggling against the Sentinels. Phoenix is easily able to beat the Sentinels. And secretly, she's going out and she has to, she's using these godlike powers and she has to feed this hunger. And Galactus even makes a comment to her that, with this power, eventually she'll have to give in to this hunger. And so she starts going out in secret and um, she's destroying like uninhabited planetoids and things like that. And it starts increasing. And we find out that Professor X has been monitoring this. And when they confront her on it, she snaps and turns once again into Dark Phoenix. And I'm not going to give anything away other than that, but then the X-Men have to face off against Jean, now fully consumed by the Dark Phoenix entity. And I'll say it doesn't go well for her fellow X-Men. It doesn't go well at all. But I mean, it was fun as a big X-Men fan. I've never read this issue, and so it was kind of fun to revisit it as a what if and what would have happened. You know, I do appreciate that they gave that recap on it because I know that there's a lot of people who like to, would like to pick up some older comics, but they feel a little threatened by the the lack of knowledge that they have in some of the characters and what was going on at the time, and it's hard to just jump into an older comic and read it. So giving that several pages of recap in an entertaining way, I thought was really helpful. And stories like this are great for people who are getting into comics, where you know you don't have to have all of that knowledge and all that history with the comics. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this because again, it's X-Men, it's What If, and I thought it was really done, and it was long. It was a good long read, which was also enjoyable. So, but that's what happens when the X-Men ask, "What if Phoenix had not died?"
All right, excellent. Jumping over to Katie, what you got for us?
Alrighty, so I picked up some of those kind of comic multi-packs from Ollie's in honor of Kirby, and one of them was from Vault Comics, which I have not really read a lot, but I kind of want to check them out. These were really good. What I have today is called Giga, Giga. number one. So number two came in the package. And since it's a limited series, I thought I'll start with number one. Like, I'm not going to be wasting my money or anything like that. So the premise of Giga is nobody knows why the skyscraper-sized mechs known as Giga fought their bitter, centuries-long war. All they know is that when the fighting finally stopped, the dormant Giga became humanity's new habitat and new gods in one. When disgraced engineer Evan Calhoun finds an apparently murdered Giga, his society and the fascistic tech-centered religious order, gosh, they were making me say vocabulary words with that, the fascistic tech-centered religious order that controls it are rapidly thrown into chaos. So this is from Vault Comics. It's written by Alex Packnadel. Artist is John Lee. Rosh, R-O-S-H, is the colorist. And Aditya Bidikar is the letterer. So issue number one opens with a group of monastic scholars looking at some ancient hieroglyphics and drawings of this Giga war that we're told about. And the Monsignor asks, one of the students, hey, tell us what happened. What do you think is our purpose and order in this cycle with the Gigas? And he starts quoting scripture, and the Monsignor's like, yeah, good for you. Anybody can memorize it. Now tell me what you actually think. And Evan, who is a teenager at this point, gives his theory that humans are kind of like the microbiome flora of the Giga. And everyone's like, the heck are you talking about? And he's explaining, the microbiome, like it exists in all organisms, and it's basically bacteria that, keep something moving forward, and they're the good bacteria that help keep you healthy and regulate your body and stuff. And they're kind of like an unseen part of life. And everyone thinks that's really stupid. I think he was kind of cooking. We should have listened to him. Well, because it's comic books, there is an explosion at this Giga that has turned into a temple. And the Monsignor says, wait, where's your friend Aiko? Like, you're always together. He says, you're always getting embroiled in the same imbroglios. Imbroglios. There we go. I love that word play. Well, it appears, unfortunately, that Aiko was messing around with stuff she shouldn't have and is deceased in this explosion. And it's an awful accident. And unfortunately, it leaves Evan, his legs get blown off and he is paralyzed and in a wheelchair. So we jump forward about, a decade and some change earlier, and we see Evan trying to scratch out a living by scavenging, metals and parts and, basically whatever is usable out of the garbage from these mechas. And it's not really going so well for him. And his buddy Mayra comes up and is like, hey, did the bad guys get you? And he says, no, I still have my kidney, so I don't think it was that. And they're going and exploring this mech that appears until recently might have been somewhat alive and is now also exploded, just like what happened 13 years ago at the temple. And so there was a lot of human casualties, and they're looking for survivors and conclude there's no way anybody could have survived that. We're not dealing with that mess. And so they go back to their city where they live inside these Giga mechs. And, they're not really so great. Somebody that Evan knew from his time in the monastery is like, hey, you should come back and join up. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. They're super corrupt, and, they always laughed at my ideas and put me down. One little moment that I loved is Evan's buddy brings him some rations, and I'm expecting, like some MREs or like, maybe bread and cheese. Pulls out a bag of dragon fruits, which A+ for creativity, because I have never seen tropical fruit like a dragon fruit referred to as a ration. So that's a new one, and I like the implication that tropical fruit is super plentiful in this area, but like things that we would consider more standard rations or food you eat when you're on hard times is not around. And then we learn that Evan is keeping a secret. So since the Giga are both kind of part of history and part of, the religious beliefs of this group of people, you're not really supposed to tinker around with mechanical stuff all that much. You're allowed to do some light engineering, but there's a limit. Well, Evan has built his own robot whose name is Laurel. And Laurel is his friend. She's very bright and friendly. But unfortunately, she has to stay hidden away from everyone because they could get in big trouble if she was found. She's having some problems with her systems that Evan can't fix on his own. So he ends up going back to the Giga where some, I guess, guards or police officers fought from the ruling class followed him and arrested him on suspicion of murder and harming this Giga that we saw earlier in the book. Now, meanwhile, we are introduced to a different group of folks who seem like they might be set up as kind of an antagonist or, you know, maybe a group of outlaws called the Dusters. Now, the Dusters, they seem like they do some organ harvesting and body snatching and, you know, not so great a group of people. And we see them bringing in one of their comrades from a patrol and they have to do field surgery on him. It's very, very gory and not looking so good. And we're introduced to this group of people. They live seemingly very, very hard lives. And they are also interested in this Giga. And we see them hiding in the background while Evan gets arrested by the police officers. That's the end of issue 1. I will say issue 2 also does kind of a time skip thing. And at first I thought I missed an issue because they're talking about Aiko while she was alive. And I'm like, wait, we established that Aiko's dead. What do you mean? Well, turns out it is a time skip. Or is it? Plot twist. Dun, dun, dun. So I am intrigued by this series. I think it is an incredible example of a cyberpunk story, and the amount of visual details and storytelling and world building that this first issue is trying to cover, I think is very impressive and ambitious. One downside of reading it digitally is while I'm zooming in on the words and stuff and using that panel to panel view, when I zoom out, then I see all these details in the pictures that I miss that really are filling in some of the gaps that I'm not getting from the words. So it's definitely worth reading multiple times. And I really like the character of Laurel. And I love the question of what makes a human, and is it ever possible for an android or a robot to be human? Can we ever be on the same level? Or are they inherently always going to be more advanced than us? And, you know, we see that play out on the micro scale as well as on the macro scale of, hey, these gigas are our gods. They're a part of our history, our religion, but we also live in them and salvage them for parts. So, very creative. I'm excited to see where this series goes. That's my review of Giga #1 from Vault Comics. Check it out and go down to Ollie's and get you some mega packs of comics.
There we go. Good. They're not a sponsor, but if they want to reach out and sponsor us, well, let's talk. Jumping over to Dr. Kurt's dad. What's your next one?
Kirby's spirit must be with us because everybody's picking things because Kirby kind of guided us that way. My next pick also was one. The last show I was on with Kirby, he was going to buy this particular book. It's volume 1 of Pinupocalypse. Pinupocalypse. By Andrew Tararuzov. He sold it to me because he said he was reading kind of the synopsis of it and talked about B movies. And my family always gives me a hard time. We went to Sci-Fi Cafe at Disney World and they were showing all the B movies up on the screen. And I'd say, I saw that one. I saw. So B movies were what I grew up with. So I had to kind of check this out. And it's the story of Roxy and Foxy in Pinupocalypse. It's Foxy's birthday. She goes out to get herself a new dress. But as she's trying on the dress, something happens. Boom! And suddenly, everybody in the city is now a zombie. So the story is of, at first, Foxy trying to make her way through all the zombies in the new environment there until she runs into Roxy, who's the other person on the cover here, who also wasn't turned into a zombie. They're the only two who aren't turned into zombies in the story. And so the story kind of runs through them trying to avoid all the zombies now in Pinupocalypse. I should say the beginning of the story was really amusing because Pinupocalypse, before it was turned into a zombie nightmare, was a cross between Leave It to Beaver and Bikini Beach stories. So 1950s, 60s sort of stuff that was going on. So it was interesting. Then we have this whole zombie thing going on, and we find out that the zombies were made by a flying saucer. It was the one who launched this whole thing that's going on. And so now they're trying to find out who is behind all this. So you have zombie movies from the 50s, you have the flying saucer people sort of movies from the 1950s. It turns out, this is my only spoiler because I hope people will read it. It's kind of an interesting book. The one spoiler is the reason that Foxy and Roxy have not been turned into zombies when everyone else was because they were chosen to reproduce the race for the aliens. The aliens have not realized that they have two females rather than a male and a female. And so when they are brought aboard the spaceship, they incur the wrath of the alien by saying, well, we're not going to be able to produce any people for you. You got two females. And so they then end up in a big fight with the alien. And of course, we get then another clear 50s B movie, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, as the alien grows to 50 feet, Foxy grows to 50 feet, and they have it out as part of it. And there's even an interesting twist of a love story in this story. So I'm not going to give away all that. This is obviously just the beginning. It's volume 1 of this storyline. I'm not sure whether they're producing them as individual issues now that are still catching up. This one ends with something that totally confused me. The very last panel is, all of this is taking place. They're rebuilding Pinupocalypse, and then there's this face who we're not exactly sure who it is that says the UBPS, which I have no idea what the initials stand for, failed to thwart us. Now it's our turn. And so you know that they're the next big baddie in the story. You'd also get a secondary story of Roxy and Foxy. It appears to be before all this takes place, but so it was interesting. Took me back to those 50 B movie sort of things. The downside is that just like 50s B movies, this is kind of sexist because that's part of the culture of those films. Though they try to combat it some by how they tell the story to undo that, it still has those elements of sexism and kind of female exploitation that's a part of the story. So that part was not really thrilling for me. But overall, the idea of going back to the 50s B films and re-experiencing my childhood was an interesting sort of thing. And certainly it's an interesting zombie story and everything else. So if you're in the mood for 50s B movie entertainment, you can pick up Pinupocalypse. Just doesn't flow off your tongue that well.
Not easier said than done. All right, jumping over to my next one here. Once again, mentioning our friend Kirby, this is a book that he absolutely would have loved. Him and I shared a common interest of the how popular the wrestling comic books have gotten. I'll probably say the last 5 years, but it's probably 10 years. But so many of the independent comic books that him and I would talk about here on the show. This is just another one, especially from a creator he adored. We are talking about Wrestle Heist. A former pro wrestler, Sterling Steele, has a brush with death thanks to a crooked promoter, Buddy Hansen, and he assembles a crew of fellow wrestlers he screwed over to rob him blind during the biggest wrestling event of the year. This comic is done by Kyle Starks, Vlad Popov, and Dylan Todd. Dylan Todd, yep. So yeah, Kirby and I had talked about Kyle Starks, his miniseries that he did. It has a long title, but it was one of the horror comedy miniseries that came out last year, and I think the year before with 2 miniseries. Cannot think of the title offhand, but Wrestle Heist. I much like the Jeff Lemire thing. When I see the wrestling and I see that Kyle Starks was doing it, I know what I'm getting when I open this, and it wasn't disappointment. This is a lot of fun. This focuses on Sterling Steele, who is the character that is on the main on the first cover here, and my buddy Brent. He's a big wrestling fan. I don't follow a lot of the modern stuff, but Brent goes back to decades old wrestling as well as the current stuff and so many independent wrestling promotions. But the covers are even styled after the Wrestling Pro Insider magazine. So like it's styled as a magazine with talking about what's inside and just the way it's designed. You can already tell there's so much love with the with a wrestling story, and these are all original characters, but you can definitely see the influences of everything from all of the classic wrestling promotions and characters. This opens up with the idea that there's a big event every year, and it's not WrestleMania, but instead it's Fightsgiving. Fightsgiving is the big wrestling event that everyone is excited for, and our lead hero character, our main character, I should say, Sterling Steele, is getting into what will eventually be like a retirement match. He has kind of this relationship with Buddy Hansen, who, talking about, making him a star, but Sterling didn't ever get the belt because Buddy didn't think he was good enough to be the champion, and talking about all the backstage politics of wrestling and promotion, and basically talking about, well, you don't make me money anymore, so yeah, you're going to lose and you're going to be retiring and you'll be done because there's another promoter that has offered more money and championship status, at a different promotion. So they kind of right off the bat, you get this, you get the dynamic between these two characters. Not much that is different from like a Vince McMahon Stone Cold or Vince McMahon and The Rock or Vince McMahon and just fill in the blank. Any type of thing. Even the WCW stuff with Eric Bischoff and this and that. You see a lot of the similarities that are influenced within the story. This character, I should say, almost kind of reminds me of Paul Heyman of ECW and WWE fame. Not only just with some of the design might be there, especially with his hairstyle and stuff like that. So as I'm reading this, I'm hearing some of these, well-known character names and stuff. But this whole issue is about Sterling going into the Fightsgiving match, and he's going to fight one of the main kind of heel characters, Guy Grudge. There's a lot of great names in this series, a lot of great wrestling names. So Guy Grudge, he's getting all oiled up in the locker room, and he's getting ready to fight. And there is a nice little touching scene between Sterling Steele and this referee that while during the intros and stuff, he's talking with him saying like, oh, hey, did you get the baby shower gift I sent you? Sent the ref. And, if you're as good as you are a ref, then you're just as good as a dad. And like, you see a lot of the cool stuff of just like how these people are friends, a referee and a wrestling personality and stuff. And, they're sad to see some of these people go. But very quickly, this match goes south in a way and gets extra violent when Guy Grudge isn't kind of cooperating with how things are played out, and things are getting a little extra rough. And this is all just the premise. And it leads to an injury on Sterling Steel. So that is the setup of this story, is that this career that this guy was getting ready to finally excel in this new promotion that he was going to join. So he's kind of putting this other promotion behind him, but he was basically sabotaged in the ring. And now we fast forward, I think, almost a year later, as the Fights Giving event is coming around for the next annual event. And Sterling Steel decides to go visit a Comic-Con because he is there to see an old friend who played the Grave Digger. And the Grave Digger has a lot of Undertaker type of, gimmick personalities and such. So we learn about the Grave Digger. But the Gravedigger actor, the wrestler, he is currently on the convention scene. So he's out there. Sterling meets him at his table, and they go in the green room on a break. And
sorry, my notification. I'll turn that off.
No problem. And I didn't know it was one of those where you open it up and it starts talking. I'm like, oh, I didn't know the book had those powers. But he's talking with the Gravedigger guy, his old friend, and talking about, hey, you also had a sour relationship with Buddy Hansen. I have an idea. The Fights Giving's coming up. This guy's rich. We're going to rob the event. And it takes a little coercing to do. This is the whole setup of what I said in the premise. And I've read issue 2 already, but this is focusing on issue 1. But ultimately, this mini series is dealing with these group rounding up a group of wrestlers who no longer work under Buddy Hansen, but want to get their revenge by robbing him blind. And it's fun as you kind of collect. It's assembling your Avengers. You're assembling your Justice League team, and it's creating your clique here and getting all these characters together and trying to figure out, recruiting a Lucha Libre character and knowing that they have a particular set of skills that's going to help infiltrate their, the vault and stuff like that. This was a ton of fun. It is a mature rated book, so a lot of language and stuff like that. But what's really, really cool is that all of the back matter, much like how the covers are like the Pro Wrestling Insider magazine style, the back matter is giving you articles about these fictional wrestling characters. So you got some photos there, you got some reports written by some people, and then what I love, if you've read my comic books, Rice Christopher, you'll see the one thing that people always tell me is that they love the fake ads. They say that the fake ads are hilarious, and it's one thing that I always have to make sure are in the book. And this book has a lot of fake ads as well, including the VHS collection of the Suplex Smorgasbord. So there we go, a VHS collection there of just all the best suplexes in the world. And there's a fake ad for that. You see the top 5 wrestlers of the month. So all these wrestlers that are just all fictional within this world that Kyle Stark created. And then there's a great ad here for a wrestling ring overstock. Own a for real life wrestling ring. We messed up bad. Our owner, Meat Stevens, ordered too many rings and we don't have space for them. We gotta move these wrestling rings fast. Get a for real life wrestling ring and teach yourself to be a professional wrestler or promote unsanctioned neighborhood fight clubs. And then there's a whole, fill out form there to get your real life wrestling ring with the fine print saying this is a fake ad, which I also do in my fake ads just so people don't, try to write in and buy this stuff. They survey a bunch of other comic book creators that are wrestling fans, and each month for each issue, they're asking them their favorite wrestlers, their favorite tag teams. My friend Dave Scheid was included in this because I know he's a big wrestling fan. He is the author of Slam, the graphic novel with Scoot McMahon that I talked about on the show, author of Mayor Goodboy. But Dave Scheid, he is also credited in here as cartoonist, and also the heavyweight pizza champion of the Midwest. But Dave Scheid lists Bret the Hitman Hart, Macho Man Randy Savage, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mick Foley as some of his favorite wrestlers. But each month has had a different focus, and Brian Azzarello is in here, Jim Rugg's in here. So a couple recognizable names. Patrick Brower, who is the co-owner of Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago, who, by the way, him and Dal, who are the owners of Challengers Comics, I've met them. I've shopped at their store many a times, and I know they're big wrestling fans. And they were basically given a cameo as the commentators for the wrestling match. So they're not really called out. They're just kind of in the background, and they're wearing the vest that they wear as their uniform for the comic shop. So I see them pop up in so many comic books of people that I know that are, whether it's Ryan Brown or Dave Scheid or Daniel Warren Johnson, you can always find Patrick and Dal in the background. And sure enough, there they were. So it's always fun to find some cameos. But yeah, this was a ton of fun. And as I mentioned, this is a book that Kirby would have absolutely loved, not only with the creator, but the wrestling topic as well. And so, yeah, this did not disappoint. I already read the second one. I'm excited for more. This is Wrestle Heist #1. All right. David, jump over to you.
All right. Reaching back into the Kirby collection. This one definitely is also the Kirby collection, as the artist on it was Jack Kirby. This is The Sandman. Issue number 6. This is from volume 2. I've never read anything with this iteration of Sandman before. So this was brand new to me. I knew this existed. I recognized the costume and everything. I knew there was a period where they had changed Sandman's kind of whole gimmick. But I was not prepared for what I found in the pages of this book. This I did see right away, that it was Kirby, and you kind of recognize just seeing the characters and the way that they're drawn and everything. It's very Kirby-like, so I wasn't surprised to read Jack Kirby in the credits. The script is Michael Fleischer, editor Joe Orlando, art Jack Kirby and Wally Wood. This is the Sandman Volume 2, number 6. There's 2 months and years on this thing. It's December-January of 1975, 1976. So it must have been released kind of like right in there. And then they couldn't decide which date to put on it. But yeah, right from the get-go, I mean, it's instantly recognizable, with the Kirby art. And just everything in this book just screams Jack Kirby. The costume designs, all the little circular patterns, like even in the water, you get the Kirby crackle. Everybody knows what the Kirby crackle is. Well, maybe not everybody. But you get that similar style, like he does that, like when he's doing water and a number of other things. He does kind of these rounded circular patterns. Even his kind of space scene in here looks, I mean, it's classic Kirby all the way. But what I didn't realize, and I don't know the whole story on it, is the Sandman at this point seems to be some sort of guardian or something of like dreams. And I know on the cover it says Master of Nightmares. They do have some nightmare stuff going on here. I wasn't familiar with the characters of Jed, Brute, and Glob who are advertised on the cover. Get to know a little bit about them as you're reading it. Jed is this kid, lives on a farm with some not so nice relatives. He obviously is an orphan and isn't treated very well by his family members, aunt and uncle, and cousins who have taken him in. It's kind of the Cinderella story. They make him do all the chores and the work, and he doesn't get to go to the ball, or in this case, I think it was a fair or a carnival. Um, and I remember Sandman, like Golden Age, had like this sand, like this gun thing,
Mhm.
right? Whereas now in this book, he's using some magic whistle thing, and they do name it. I'm trying to think of what it was called in here. It was like the hypno whistle or something like that. Just an odd device that I couldn't quite grasp exactly what the extent of the abilities of this magic whistle are. Um, but it seemed to like be able to call people in and out of this dream realm. Um, and the villains in here, um, you've got the villain is Dr. Spider. I'm trying to find a better picture. He's like a human, like torso and head with all these little robot arms coming off of him, like right here.
Okay.
Um, and he's clearly been a villain before and after. Um, he gets away. Kind of reminded me of a lot of classic like cartoon villains. Where every episode of a villain, they'd show up with some new plot and then they get away at the end. That's kind of how this one goes. So I don't know how prominent Dr. Spider, or I might even have that wrong. It might have been Mr. Spider. Um,
How to doctor him?
it's Dr. Spider.
Okay.
Um, I should know that. Most villains are doctors, right?
No relation to Dr. Kurt's dad.
Dr. Kurt's dad. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but uh, yeah, I mean, Sandman faces off against an evil android version of himself. He's helped out by his friends Brute and Glob, who apparently some sort of nightmare kind of creatures. Um, it's just a wild ride. Um, and I'm still not sure what to make of this. It's just, again, this was very Jack Kirby, but you read it and it's just like this. Um, you're just kind of like going, wow, what did I get myself into? What kind of drugs am I on while I'm reading this? It's just this crazy adventure that they go on. Um, and I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what to make of all this. I'd be really interested to read more of this just to see if this is what it typically is. Um, I'm I got to research this a little bit. I'm curious as to how long this version of the Sandman went on for, in the crazy Kirby kind of costume and everything else with these wild dream type worlds and everything else. And I should ask Dr. Kurtzstad, are you familiar with this at all? Have you
No, and it's
read any of
interesting
this?
because it sounds like it's a cross between, you talked about the Silver Age Sandman who worked with the Justice Society, but it also seems like it has elements of Sandman, the more recent series where he's actually in the dream world, running dreams, and he flees from that to the planet. And um, there seems to be elements of that too, that he's somehow tuned into the dreams and nightmares of other people. And hmm,
Yeah,
interesting.
he's kind of got this this technology, and he's monitoring dreams.
Mhm.
Um I'm not sure what the explanation is for these two being kept in these jars,
Yeah,
because at first I'm thinking, okay, these are like villains that he's captured and he's
yeah.
keeping them there, but no, he's actually they're
Yeah,
like
so it seems
friends.
to
They
have
help him
these
out. he blows this magic whistle. It gets him out of the jars,
Yeah.
and then they help him.
So it seems
Um,
like it's almost got elements of Neil Gaiman's Sandman alongside
um,
of, you know.
yeah, and I think the original Sandman did get kind of used. I think he made some appearances in the Neil Gaiman version of Sandman.
Mhm.
So there's probably some sort of connective tissue there, but it's
Yeah,
just
that does sound
crazy.
trippy.
You get these sea monster like I don't know, like a submarine kind of thing. I'm not sure it's in the water, but it's also in like this dream thing and can travel back and forth between the two. Um, yeah, it's like I don't know. It's crazy. It's a crazy book. Um,
Is that Sandman at
and
all connected to the JSA, like the one that was the Silver Age Sandman?
I think this is that version of Sandman.
Okay.
Just in my comic book knowledge, without reading it, my understanding was that at some point they changed that character,
Okay.
and he's given it this new costume and everything else. I think eventually he goes back to being was it Wesley Dodds? Because they
Yeah.
never mention his
Yeah.
name in here.
Wesley Dodds
They
is
never.
the Sandman in Silver Age. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be the same character. They never mention his identity. But I believe that I've read that in the past that this is that character. Um, and so I don't know what the story is here. I'm very curious. I'm gonna have to do a little research and because it just left me kind of going, what did I just read?
You have to go back to volume one and start at the beginning.
After reading that, I feel like this is my head.
This could be your head if you just read this issue.
So, yeah, entertaining, but just like I said, it was just crazy. So
Okay.
there you go.
Okay, we have one more from Dr. Kurtzstad. What are you bringing to the table here?
Well, I'm continuing my constant search for heroes who really didn't get much play. I realized that a lot of the ones I've done in the past have been Marvel heroes. So I felt like I needed to do something from DC. So I did find, oops, see if we can get it on the screen here. Oh, lost the page. Go back. That's the problem with electronic
Yep.
versions. Aztec. When David comes back, we'll have to see if he has heard of Aztec before. Created by Grant Morrison in 1998, I think. Aztec is a hero who shows up in a town or a city called Vanity, which is like the most crime-ridden, terrible place in the world, sort of thing. And as it unfolds, we find out that Aztec has been sent there by a group called Council Q from kind of a almost interdimensional reality. We find out that in the past, Quetzalcoatl, now we get the Aztec gods that I'm have trouble pronouncing, fought a war against Tetzalcoatl, who is the Dark Force, and won. Beat the Dark God and sent them away. Always works through human avatars. And so since that time, Council Q has been training people to be ready, and because the prophecy is that the Dark God will return and that there will be a similar confrontation. And so they're preparing people to be the avatar for Quetzalcoatl. So that they can win the war when it comes. And Aztec is the newest recruit to do this. He's given a special mask that carries all the historical knowledge of of the Aztec people throughout all time. He has a suit that is near invulnerable. All of it increases his strength some and his abilities. So he is the representative that's been sent to handle this cosmic confrontation when it comes. He ends up in Vanity, has to figure out how he's going to live there because he's just been trained in this monastery somewhere. Now he shows up. He hasn't got an apartment. He hasn't got anything going on. And he goes into a bank and runs into a bank robbery by a supervillain. Changes into his Aztec costume. At this point, the newspaper later dubs him as Aztec because of his mask and stuff. But he goes in, beats down this villain almost within an inch of his life, and then disappears. And so the newspapers begin to run this column about this new superhero Aztec who's in town, handling things. But he, in the meantime, has figured out that he goes to the hospital to find out about the guy he beat up, to find out if he lived, and finds out that they're looking for Kurt Falconer, their new doctor, and he takes over the identity. So he becomes Kurt Falconer. His real name is Uno. And he then becomes a superhero in Vanity. The problem is he's now struggling with what he just did to this supervillain. And so he begins to take on being the protector of this town. And he does things not only like stop robberies and stuff like that, but gets cats out of trees for kids and all this other stuff. And Council Q is not happy with this. His idea was to go to this town, to hide, to wait for the final confrontation, and then let Quetzalcoatl take over his identity and win this dark battle. So they bring him back, they chastise him. We find out his father was also a version of this sort of being who's supposed to wait for the final day, but his dad fell in love with a woman and betrayed his trust. And so now they're wondering if he's just, a failure at this job. Other people want to take over for him, but they send him back. And it starts to be that Justice League characters show up in Vanity to work with him. Green Lantern shows up. Batman shows up. And by the end of the 10-issue series that introduces Aztec, we find out that they've been trying to get him into the Justice League, Council Q, because they figure, well, if he can't handle it, maybe Justice League people can come and help him at this final confrontation. And we also find out that they had some special help getting him into the Justice League. Lex Luthor is working to get him into the Justice League. So then Aztec disappears for a little bit, and he shows up again a year later in Justice League Comics. Justice League number 5, or JLA number 5. It's JLA by that point. He is one of the people who comes to apply to be a part of the Justice League. They don't take him, but you get a panel where he shows up and they, talk to him a little bit. And then a few issues later, he ends up in the Justice League because some people left. So he's in the Justice League, Aztec. And the first encounter he has is the Injustice League is attacking the Justice League, and Aztec gets left on the watchtower by himself. And the Injustice League teleports in a bunch of atomic bombs to blow the place up. And most of the comic is about what's going on with all the other people who are fighting the Injustice League. The only thing we get is his initial, they just dropped all these atomic bombs here. And then at the end of everything else, he's sitting in front of one of the bombs. Well, I managed in 3 minutes to disarm all of them. So that's his great introduction to his place in the Justice League. A little bit later, he then ends up in another series of Justice League comics where Magadon, this kind of huge planet, is coming to destroy the Earth. And it turns out that it's actually a manifestation of the dark god he's supposed to resist. So he ends up, during the confrontation, going there and taking on this planetary entity, and his suit is driven by fourth dimensional power, which is supposed to be this super powerful kind of energy source. And he triggers it and blows up himself and damages the planet enough that now Justice League can win. But now we see the end of Aztec and that kind of fiery explosion. And we think, well, there went that character. But Aztec does show up then in 2007. But now it's a woman who is Aztec. The helmet after the explosion fell back to Earth, and she discovered the helmet, put it on, and got all the knowledge of the Aztec people throughout all history, puts the costume on. She appears at the very end of one issue and one whole issue of Justice League, working with Ray in Vanity, where now Ray is kind of the superhero that's gone back there after working with the Justice League, and she's chastising him for, you left and went off to the Justice League, so I had to take over here as the superhero. But she's there because Council Q has sent her to be the stop against the Dark God when it returns. And the final issues then where she appears in Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman is now fighting against the Dark God, which I can't pronounce, from Aztec mythology, and she joins in and they defeat it again and send it back to the dark area where it was. So those are really, that's that short-lived sort of existence of Aztec. Now, you would think with Grant Morrison being the guy who creates this character that it would get more traction than it did.
Yeah.
But it really didn't. And I have to say, though, there were interesting aspects to it. There were two pieces that made it hard for me to kind of embrace this character. One is that you never really got a very deep sense of the character himself. He's got this mission that they sent him on, and he's there. And you go, well, yeah, but who is he really? You get a little sense. I did really appreciate when they had him become more soft in his, I should be protecting people. I shouldn't just be waiting for this end of the world sort of confrontation. I should be doing something important. And he does do a little bit of that. The female character doesn't have any of that. So there's not this deep connection with the character. There's action, there's stuff like that, but there's not, how do you really connect with this character? The second thing that sort of bothered me is I couldn't figure out whether they were going for kind of honoring the Aztec mythology and the things that were going on, or whether, and I know for a lot of people this will be kind of, I don't know, too much proper sort of thinking, but I got the impression that this story was also a little bit of cultural appropriation that was going on with it, especially because I'm trying to find a picture here of his alter ego, of this person who they send in to be Aztec. Should be able to track down a picture here easier than this, but of course, one can never find what they're looking for. Here we go. So this is the alter ego of the person who is Aztec. Blonde, blue-eyed. You're taking a Central American, South American mythological structure, and you're putting in a typical white American as the character. And there's something that, for me anyway, that was out of sync. You're trying to bring in kind of a concept from another culture. Why don't you bring in a character who is consistent with that mythology? And it's probably at a time when they weren't as aware of it, but now reading it now, I have to say, well, I'm not sure that I'm real comfortable with that. Have you run into Aztec in the comics, David? Because you're a bigger DC fan than I am.
Um, not really. I've seen the character um a few times, but not in anything significant. I haven't read the Aztec title. I do remember when that character first appeared. I don't remember when they introduced the female version of the character, although I have seen images of the character as a female, but I haven't read anything with
Yeah, that was in
her version
2007.
in it. So, because Aztec, I mean that goes back further. That would have been like 90s
Yeah, 98, I think, was when they brought it in.
when it, yeah, right. Um, so um, so there were a few minor things.
Yeah, he only appeared
I
in,
think probably the Justice League appearances,
yeah,
perhaps.
he appeared, I think, 7 times in Justice JLA. And
Yeah,
that's the only appearances we have within JLA. Even though he's brought in as a member, he's not really used much within the context of JLA. And it's mainly in the JLA stories that were written by Grant Morrison, who actually created the character.
right.
Um, so
Yeah, I mean, I think there might have even been an action figure, but the character never seemed to take off. I never really heard much about the character. Um, maybe as a background character in, like I want to say Aztec might have been a background character in something like, Zero Hour or something like that, but that's about it.
yeah.
Yeah, I really couldn't tell you
So this really is a case of a
anything.
character created that didn't have much play. And I at least have to say that for me, it's partially they didn't give him much of a real depth. He
Yeah.
was a guy who showed up and he represented, I think, a concept they wanted to play with. Let's play with these Aztec mythologies and bring them into somehow the DC universe. But I'm not sure they did it in a really effective sort of way.
No, and an interesting thing is around that time, the newer characters that were created, they weren't necessarily promoted very well. Um, Now you get characters and people complain that, that all these characters are, it's part of the wokeness and they're being forced on you and everything. Um, but I think, in a market that is flooded with all characters that have been around for so long, you almost have to force new characters in
Mm,
because otherwise nobody's going to know
mm.
who they are or anything because you almost have to do that. But they didn't do that at the time, and sure enough, people barely knew that they existed.
Yeah. And if you're going to force in a character like that, you have to give them something compelling that makes people really want to connect with the character. And there, as far as I was concerned anyway, and I read just about everything Aztec was in, I was not compelled by the character itself.
Yeah, well,
There was
I mean,
nothing about him that.
you'd have to connect with them on some level. Usually, a character, if you like a character, it's because you relate to them in some way, or there's something to that character where you find it, fascinating. And it sounds like Aztec was just a character that lacked any of that would really um, draw people in or keep them, if they did pick up an issue.
So there's another one of those characters that came in, went out. It's a little surprise. The most surprising thing to me is probably that Grant Morrison was the creator, and we got something that really wasn't that stupendous.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to the next character that you are trying to, unearth here and discover and study. So, good. All right, well, that is then going to do it for the show. Let's wrap it up with quick plugs here. crimsoncowlcomics.com for info and original webcomics. And since David's here, you can speak on the new addition to crimsoncowlcomics.com that you added, if you want to let the audience know what they can find now.
Oh, yes. So I started working on a comic strip called Spec. Spec is about kind of a disgraced starship captain who gets a chance to redeem himself, gets a new ship, a new crew, and a new mission. The problem is nobody likes him. His crew hates him, and um, they're sent off to a planet that turns off to be Earth, and we'll find out in time that Spec actually, much like his name, is very small. Um, so interesting comic strip. The first six, I believe, strips are up for free. And we are working on a comic book where those strips will be in the comic book. There will be some new material. It's all going to be full color being done by Kurt Schub. Uh, and so far, from what I've seen of the coloring, looks really good. I've been working on reformatting some of those strips. There's new dialogue being added. So you get the free stuff online, and there will be some additions to what is available for free on the website. Um, but it will be different and worth picking up when the comic book version is
That one
released.
aside for me.
We're shooting for May.
Cool, cool. You can also, if you're interested in some of the other physical comics, you can always email crimsoncowlcomics@gmail.com. For the audio version of this podcast, Crimson Cowl Comic Club over on iTunes. Subscribe, rate, and review. If you want the full video experience, then check out Crimson Cowl Comic Club over on YouTube. I have my own comic books, Rice Christopher. You can email me, latchkeykid@gmail.com. That's LAATSCH, latchkeykid@gmail.com, as well as my art accounts over on Facebook and Instagram under my name. Once again, LAATSCH. I am one of the hosts of Cartoonist by Night over on YouTube, a drawing show. Our most recent episode, by the time this episode drops, will be interviewing Beth, aka the Chalk Girl, and the subject that we were drawing and discussing was fantasy. We'll learn all about the Chalk Girl and all of our favorites for the genre of fantasy over at Cartoonist by Night over on YouTube. And then we always want to keep reminding people of our friend Kirby's channel, Under the Cowl of MS, over on YouTube to go back into his archive of all of the videos that he has on there. Just hours upon hours of content to check out, including stories and fun things with artists. Comic book reviews, as well as like art unboxings, unpackings, and things like that. So check out Under the Cowl of MS over on YouTube. And that is going to do it. Oh, we do have the one plug. I just switched around my plugs here. Because David is here with us too, he can speak on it more, but I'll bring up the graphic. Right now, when people get this episode, it'll be March, but it's never too late to start marking dates into your calendar for Saturday, May 16th, 2026, because David is running this event. Can you let people know what we are talking about?
We are talking about PromCon. This is the West Bend High School's Comic Con. This is our second year. Last year, we jokingly referred to it as PromCon because it fell on the same day as prom. We've officially changed the name to PromCon. It is once again the same day as the high school's prom, and we're kind of playing into it. No, you don't have to be a high school student to come join us at this event. But we are having some kind of prom-themed fun little events within the event. Um, there will also be a costume contest. There will be some trivia. Our own Crimson Cowl Comic Club member Jim will be running a D&D event going on there. So you can join him for that. And we're having free admission this year. Um, so May 16th, mark your calendar, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Free admission. Come on in, wear a costume, don't wear a costume, up to you. You'll do better with the costume contest if you do wear a costume, though. And as part of the whole prom thing, we're the West Bend High School Comic Club has put together this fun little competition. It's called Conquest. It'll involve going around and visiting some of the different things going on at PromCon, making some notes, answering some questions, getting some stamps from some select vendors, and being able to participate in that, dropping off that little form that we give you, and you could possibly be crowned as the Con King or Con Queen.
Wow. There we go.
So May 16th.
Cool. We'll continue to promote that to make sure people check it out and check it out. That's what it is. Check it out and check it out. All right, that is going to do it then for this episode. Thank you for checking it out. If you love the show, please let people know about it and get the word out there. And to everybody that showed up to the Crimson Cowl Media tables over at the Milwaukee Comic Con, thank you once again for continuing to support, and stay tuned for future appearances as well. That is going to do it for this episode. This whole time, I've been Stone Cold Cactus Laatsch.
I'm still confused over that whole Jack Kirby issue weirdness.
I've been an unexpected dragon fruit.
I've been watching in these super secret glasses old sci-fi B movies this entire time.
To be continued. I always forget to have David say that because he's here.
Everybody take care, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Slimer.
Nefarious hoarders of the rarest antiquity, and I should start all this over.
Take two.
Nah, just run with it.
Antiquities.